We are changing the differential and CV axles in my W123 today. If you've been keeping up with the channel for a while, you probably already know why, but if not, I had a CV axle nearly disintegrate on me on the highway a while back. The boot had ripped, all the grease had came out, and it started making some very unhappy noises and vibrations. So it was time to change that thing out before it failed catastrophically. Now, in amongst all this, I found one of the rare 2.88 ratio differentials in a junkyard. Got a great deal on it. It came with CVs that were in much better shape than the ones I already had. So I decided to reboot those axles and change the whole thing in one fell swoop. Now, it might be easier to do this in stages, change the axles out, change the differential out, but this is the way I'm going to do it, and you get to watch me struggle as I change the CVs and differential as one assembly. So let's get into it. In order to remove our existing differential, we gotta there's 4 bolts that hold it to the subframe up in here, which are gonna be a challenge to get to. And then there's the mount right here as well. So my plan is I've already got both of the axle bolts in the ends under like the wheel covers. I've got them out so the axles can come out of the hubs. I do have an exhaust in the way. And then there's the flex disc, WIBO, whatever you want to call it up here. So I'm going to have to disconnect that. I may hang the drive shaft down so that I can get up to the bolts that hold diff to the subframe, get those out, and then put a jack under here, take this out, and kind of start hanging this thing down. I'm going to have to pull this axle, then probably slide the whole thing kind of out through where I'm at. So, I don't know. I'm going to get the jack out of the way up here so that I can get to the flex disc. Alright, I think I've remembered something important. So I've done this differential swap before on my gray W123. I do believe that the bolts holding the diff to the subframe are a lot easier to get off if you drop this mount and just lower it, because the subframe has bushings up there, and so you can just lower it gently, get to these 4 bolts that hold this on, and then this whole thing slides out a whole lot easier. tightened up our 4 bolts that mount the diff to the subframe. So now all I've got to do is put our mount back on here. Our guaibo needs to be reconnected, and then our axle bolts on either end need to be actually torqued. So I'm going to lift this with our jack so that I can get these 4 in the mount, and then it will be held up in place where it needs to go. All right, we are done under the car. Now we've just got to get our 2 axle bolts tightened, and this thing can come down off jack stands and hit the road. In theory, having changed this all out, the new ratio should drop my cruising RPM about 200 RPM. Now that's not a huge drop, and real world that may not necessarily actually carry through with the theoretical calculators and things that I've run. And that's mostly because the W123s don't have a lockup torque converter, so there is always going to be some slippage of that torque converter. Now, with that being said, having the new CV axles that aren't disintegrating and freshened up differential that will drop the RPM a little bit, hopefully it'll have an impact on my fuel economy, and if nothing else, make the ride a little bit quieter, a little bit nicer on the highway. But I haven't had any chance to take any longer trips, so I guess you're gonna have to wait and see what happens after I've got a little bit more data and I've had some more time to drive the car around with the 288. But in the meantime, everything seems to have gone smoothly. The car runs, drives, and is back to its usual self, not falling apart on the highway like it was with that CV coming apart. So that's all for today. Thanks for watching.